Yesterday, the official Twitter account for the Rings of Power tweeted out this teaser for season 2 of the Rings of Power, or it's better to say they tweeted out this teaser for the teaser trailer because, they really want to make sure people know that this is going on because, well, they're actually trying to make their money back on it. Amazon Prime reportedly spent around $250 million just to acquire the rights for the Rings of Power, or some of the appendices that they're using to adapt, or at least that's what they're claiming right now. In addition to all the other seasons and stuff that they spent on the show, they're looking to probably invest somewhere around the $1 billion range in order to try to make the Rings of Power series. And so far after the first season, it really wasn't well received. As you can see, the critics liked it, but the critics aren't the ones who pay the bill. That's the audience is what matters. And 38% for audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is not a good sign for this. But that's the first season. How is this second season, or at least how is it being received? And it's really not that good for them. As you can see here, we got the YouTube video from the official Prime Video account on YouTube, and you can see the like to dislike ratio is pretty detrimental for it. 36,000 downvotes to 95,000 upvotes as the time of the recording. And this isn't just for the Prime Video one either. You can look at the Prime Video one from other countries too. You got the Australia, New Zealand one right here, and that's also being ratioed. You got this other one from the UK. That's also pretty badly received. So it looks like a lot of people just aren't looking forward to this. In fact, this reminder that they tweeted out yesterday was basically just to let people know it's like, hey, come out here and downvote this. And I know some people are going to say like, oh, it's just review bombed or what, or people are just attacking it in this way. And it's like, okay, yeah, there's probably some of that going around. But if there were rabid fans of the Rings of Power, like they're trying to claim, well, then presumably there would also be people equally upvoting it too. But that's not what's going on right now. What's happening is people just making sure that they're saying like, yeah, we're not happy with the Rings of Power because people saw the first season, they didn't like it, hence this terrible score right here. And now when the second season's coming out, people just aren't looking forward to it. And we can even see this not only in the review scores from here, but just actually in the numbers too, as far as viewership of the first season goes. While Amazon, like other streamers, provided only limited data and internally it held information even more closely than usual on the series, sources confirm that the Rings of Power had a 37% domestic completion rate, customers who watched the entire series. Overseas, it reached 45%. A 50% completion rate would be a solid but not spectacular result, according to insiders. This goes on to talk about how Rings of Power got snubbed at the award season 2, only receiving one SAG-AFTRA nomination for Stunt Ensemble. Jennifer Salke at Amazon Studios, though, had to say that no, it was a success despite all the failures that was the first season because there was like a lot of setup and everything like that, but it's totally going to pay off in the second season. Just trust me on that one. I know we've done nothing to actually earn your trust, but trust us, it's actually going to get better from here. But Nielsen numbers are also showing a pretty grim picture for Rings of Power season 1, saying that it was actually around the number 15 mark for the year. And it's gotten beat out by a bunch of Netflix shows, which pretty much take up most of the spaces in the top 10 spot. So not a good sign for this, considering how much money they actually spent on the series. We don't know the actual numbers yet, but with the seasons that they already have planned for this, the $250 million that they spent just to acquire the rights for it, and around the $400 or so million mark that's estimated for the first season, it's looking like Amazon is going to spend nearly $1 billion. And that's a show that just hits the number 15 spot, which is not a good sign for them. But it seems like after looking at the latest ratio on their new trailer, audience is probably not going to come back to this. I'm expecting the numbers going to be probably worse for season 2 versus season 1 because people already watched season 1, or at least they tuned in early on and they just did not like what they were doing because it didn't look like Lord of the Rings. And I'm not saying it didn't look like Lord of the Rings as in it didn't look like the Peter Jackson films. It just looked like a cheap knockoff. A lot of the costumes just looked like that. It looked like costumes. The sets just looked like cheap sets and stuff like that, which is remarkable considering how much money they spent on it. Not to mention their political agenda was front and center with the race swap casting and all that other stuff. Just goes to show that they're putting their identity politics and all that other stuff in the forefront because that was really the whole point of this. They didn't really want to pay any respect to Tolkien's work or anything that he did. They just wanted to use the property as kind of a big billboard in order to push their own agenda. And a lot of audiences who turned out to watch the first episode of this immediately tuned out of it because they didn't want to be lectured to, or they don't care about that stuff. They wanted something that would actually be faithful to the source material and faithful to the lore, not only in the books, but also in the movies that Peter Jackson had, because Peter Jackson was trying to be faithful to it. That's why it was so successful. And that's why it looks like this upcoming season is going to be a failure too. But I'm not going to definitively say that's going to happen. I'm saying it looks like that's what's going to happen with this. But it is possible for it to come back from the brink like this, because we have seen such a thing in the past. Like, look at Game of Thrones. That had a pretty big failure in the way that ended. A lot of people weren't happy with that. Then when House of the Dragon was announced, it had to kind of ride the coattails of a failed show. And a lot of people were pretty much just dismissing that already, like myself included. I thought that was going to be another flop of a series, because I was like, well, I've seen how Game of Thrones end, and this one's coming up. I'm not expecting much of it. And then when it came out, lo and behold, it turned out the show was actually pretty good. And now it just so happened that today HBO and Warner Brothers decided to release their trailer for season 2 of House of the Dragon. And look how that's being received on YouTube. We have 52,000 upvotes to less than 1,000 downvotes. So it looks like people are actually excited for season 2 of House of the Dragons. And you can't say that about Rings of Power. So as far as high fantasy goes, if you want to watch a fantasy series, you got something that's coming out that looks like it might be pretty good, but it looks like Rings of Power is probably going to be another flop for the studio. And I don't know how much longer they can continue with this, because they can say all they want that the show was actually successful, but they spent so much money on it that I don't really know where they're spending that money on it. To be honest, it's probably just a money laundering scheme for the executives, but still, they can only lose so much money before eventually they just pull the plug on it, or they have to change course and give the fans what they want. But let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. Did you see the trailer or not? What did you think about it? And if you haven't already, make sure you click the subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with the latest in entertainment news. And don't forget to like and share the video, because it really helps out with the channel. Thank you.